All right, I'd like to call this meeting of the Lakota Board of Education to order today, November 18th. Adam, will you please call the roll?
Mr. D.
Here.
Ms. Casper.
Here.
Ms. French.
Here.
Mr. Horton.
Here.
Ms. Schaefer.
Here. Do I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Adam, please call the roll.
Ms. French.
Yes.
Mr. D.
Yes.
Ms. Casper.
Yes.
Mr. Horton.
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer.
Yes. Do I have a motion to, opening items. Do we have any?
Pledge of Allegiance.
Gotcha. Sorry. Pledge of Allegiance. I don't know why I'm struggling with Julie's first meeting. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you for all of our students and families who are here in our audience. We look forward to getting to the student spotlight and being able to recognize you. Wanted to mention a thanks also to my fellow board members. We've had a lot of time together in the last couple weeks. We did the OSBA Capital Conference, and then we had a board retreat Thursday night, which was helpful in establishing board norms, setting some goals, and we look forward to continuing the work on board development. So with that, I will hand it over to Dr. Whiteley.
As part of our board retreat, we did discuss the upcoming possible changes that we were looking to our meeting schedules after our organizational meeting on January 6th that we're looking to have. So again, organizational meeting would be January 6th at 6 o'clock. But in addition to that, we were discussing changing the cadence of our meetings going forward. So what that would mean is we would still have 2 meetings a month. One of those meetings would be a planning meeting, or if you want to call it like a work-based session. Those meetings would now be on Tuesday in rooms D and E, and those would happen from 7 o'clock in the morning to a exact end stop at 9 o'clock because of work schedules. So again, Tuesday mornings, starting in February, as long as this is approved at the organizational meeting, would be at 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. On Tuesdays in D and E. And then we would keep our regular meetings, what we're at this month right now, on Mondays, same time, same place, so 6 o'clock p.m. at the Lakota East Freshman Building. So again, we would probably be looking at the second week and the fourth week of the month, but we will get those proposed date for the organizational meeting on January 6th for approval so that you can see those exact dates and calendars to see if there's any conflicts. But again, just looking to move that first meeting of the month from Monday evenings to Tuesday mornings. And what that would mean is, again, a planning meeting or a work session. So all of our business or approval would happen at the Monday meetings, the Monday evening meetings, keeping that Tuesday meeting free for presentations, discussions, work sessions that we would need to have. And everything would still be recorded, so the community members can still watch both of those meetings, so that would not change. But again, just a change in time, dates, and format as far as the room or the location.
Great, yeah, and we can still determine, like, ultimately, sometimes we do them second,
Yep,
fourth, sometimes
yep.
first
We'll look
and
at those
third, so
conflicts, yep. And we're also gonna check some negotiation language just to make sure that we're clear that there's not anything in language in either negotiated agreement that dictates a meeting needs to happen at a certain time during the year.
All right. Any further discussion? All right.
Just a couple of additional updates I want to give you on enrollment, because I know that's always a piece that we look into. Enrollment, our current enrollment is 17,442. So that is down 186 students from last year. So again, roughly the same trends that we've seen. And when you distribute that all over the buildings, it's not too bad. But again, just wanted to bring that to your attention. Also wanted to let you know that Lakota Central, since the end of first quarter, has increased their enrollment by 26 students based on need. And those are coming from both East and West based on some criteria that we use to make sure that students are working towards their personalized goal towards graduation. All fall sports are officially done, and winter sports are now underway. And as you look at the district calendar, lots of holiday concerts coming up, lots of winter performances. You might have been at the play this weekend, so really active time. But fall sports are officially done, and winter sports are on the way. And then speaking of fall sports, just a reminder what it takes to be a GMC All Academic Award from fall sports. What that means is the student athlete must be in grades 10 through 12. They must receive a varsity letter for the sport they are participating in, and they must have a cumulative GPA of 3.3 or higher. At Lakota East, they had 121 fall athletes who received that award, and at Lakota West, they had 96 fall athletes who received that award. So again, fall sports consist of football, girls soccer, boys soccer, volleyball, girls golf, girls tennis, boys cross country, and girls cross country. So something to really be proud of. You know, it is student athlete, right? Because the student's first and the athlete is just the icing on the cake. And then, of course, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about next week. Next week is an odd schedule in the district. Monday and Tuesday are regular school days. We do not have school on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday because of the Thanksgiving holiday. And then we will resume school, hard to believe, the next Monday, which is December, December 2nd. So busy times, but wonderful, wonderful things happening in the district.
Great. Anything else? Hearing nothing, Mr. Zink?
I will save my comments for the forecast presentation in a little bit.
All right. And now we get to move to the highlight of the meeting, our student spotlight.
Good evening. So tonight you're going to meet some very talented students from Independence Elementary and Plains Junior Schools. Visitors to Independence Elementary were captivated as they explored the exhibits of the school's first Poetry Palooza. Here to share more about the event, along with some original poetry, are fourth grade teachers Stacy Becker, Vicki Copley, and Jenny Garwood, along with students Emmett Adams, Molly DeMasters, and Bo Schneider. Good evening. Thanks for having us. I think we got a few little butterflies here going on. But during the first quarter, Indy's fourth graders read the novel Love That Dog by Sharon Creech. And this was part of our new curriculum, the EL Education Language Arts curriculum. And in this novel, we have a boy named Jack who reads poetry at school. And at first, he hates poetry, very reluctant to write. But as he begins to write poems throughout our story, he discovers a talent for writing and a love for poetry. And we saw the same transformation in many of our students. The kids who were hesitant to read or hesitant to write poetry in August became excited and eager to write poetry throughout the first quarter. And each time Jack read a famous poem in his book, he would write a poem in response, and often emulating the poet's style or alluding to their actual work. And we gave our students at Indy the same opportunity. And after reading The Red Wheelbarrow by William Carlos Williams, our students wrote their own poems in his format to honor an everyday object that was important to them. And I think Molly DeMasters is going to read the original poem by William Carlos Williams called The Red Wheelbarrow. Do you have it memorized, or do you want this?
I want the book.
You want the book.
The Red Wheelbarrow by William Carlos Williams. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens.
And yes, that is the entire poem. And so we then had our kids, again, they chose something that was important to them, and then they modeled their own poetry after that. And Molly's going to read the poem that she wrote.
A good friend. So much depends upon a good friend, caring and kind, filled with love, right beside me, playing and running and having fun.
Mrs. Garwood?
One of our students' favorite poems to emulate was the concrete poem, The Apple, by S.C. Rigg. This poem is shaped like an apple, with words naming parts of the apple, describing its taste, even a whimsical nod to the worm you might find inside an apple. So each of our students wrote a concrete poem as well, choosing words to carefully fill a shape relating to their topic. Here with us today to share his shape poem is Bo Schneider.
I made my poem in the shape of a globe. The water was made up of words like river, ocean, and waves. The land was filled with words like mountain, state, and grass.
At the end of the novel, the character of Jack finally falls in love with poetry when he reads the poem Love That Boy by Walter Dean Myers. Jack writes his own version, Love That Dog, as a tribute to his beloved pet. As this poem was the novel's namesake, we asked our students to not only craft a poem about something important to them, but also design a book cover to accompany their poem. So along with this simple cover, our students made their own version and got to put the cover next to their poem, like Love That Otter and Love That Ball. So showing something that mattered to them and giving them a chance to be a little creative as well. As our lessons progressed, each student also chose a famous poet to study more closely. Each group researched the poet's motivation by reading biographies and famous works of poets like Robert Frost, Valerie Worth, and Walter Dean Myers. Students then wrote essays citing their research to share what inspires poets.
And just like those famous poets, our students found inspiration all around them and wanted to keep writing. They wrote haikus, they wrote in the form of acrostic poems, blackout poems, recipe poems. They filled their portfolio with all of the poetry that they could be proud of. Emmett Adams is here tonight to share his free choice poem, in which he wanted to write about something mysterious. This was right before Halloween, right? He wanted to write about something mysterious that caused people to ask questions while they were reading it.
In the night, a dim street light flickers. A pair of critters searching in bins set out labeled Rumpke. Very little traffic though. All of a sudden a crash is heard. Sirens blare. A dark figure appears holding a small black bag, stuffing anything he can find into it. He runs into a car and drives away mysteriously. Later the cops show, but no one else is there.
By the end of our module, we wanted to celebrate and share our students' hard work, so we invited our families to join us for the first Poetry Palooza. During this event, families followed a passport all around our building to view student poems and projects on display. They added to a collaborative poetry project, and they read poetry together. Some of our younger students illustrated pictures to go with poems we posted on the wall. Some of our students even volunteered to read their poetry live in front of an audience. An entire quarter focused on poetry. It was initially daunting for students and teachers alike, but our students' poetic talents and pride in themselves at our first ever Poetry Palooza made it evident that these independent students will rise to any challenge, and we are so excited to continue helping them finding joy in their learning. Thank you for inviting us to share our amazing students with you today.
Thank you. Any other questions from anyone for our kids? Thank you for embracing the new curriculum and finding the love in this learning. So we appreciate that. If you'd like to join us up front, we'd love to take a photo with you.
head over to Plains Junior School, where art teacher Stephanie Gower has creatively combined a study of artist Marc Chagall with our community's 26th annual celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Ms. Gower is here with 7th grader Ruby Albrecht to share more about the lesson, which combines Dr. King's 1967 "What is Your Life's Blueprint" speech with Marc Chagall's 1911 "I Am the Village" painting.
Hello. I would like to first thank everyone for the invitation to talk about my Art 7 MLK plus U plus Chagall mixed media project and the opportunity to introduce you to my wonderful student, Ruby. This project was inspired by the upcoming 2025 MLK You Choose contest. Thanks to the input of my wonderful colleagues, Jody Kessler and Andrea Tumbleson, in about 6 hours on a Saturday, I was able to put together this project. I had selected Dr. King's "What is Your Life's Blueprint" speech, which he gave to students at Barrett Junior High in Philadelphia in 1967. He gave this speech 4 years after his famous "I Have a Dream" speech and 5 months before he was tragically assassinated. Students watched highlights of the speech, we discussed and analyzed it, then students selected their favorite quote. We moved on to studying, analyzing, and describing blueprints and the work of Marc Chagall and his painting, "I Am Village." Marc Chagall dealt with prejudices throughout his life, which forced him to move throughout World War I and World War II. We spent time talking about Chagall's use of symbolism and his dreamlike compositions that broke all the traditional rules. Students at this point then answered questions pertaining to their own blueprint and goals and began collecting images that symbolized their future. We talked about how windows, doors, and doorways could symbolize pathways between different stages of our lives and in our designs. The next step was to bring all that together in a sketch, an eventual project which they used pencil, marker, and watercolor pencils on. Sprinkled throughout the creative process were little conversations about how ideas change and are revised. We think outside the box, we struggle with parts, and from time to time we hit roadblocks. These are not just natural and necessary steps in the creative process, but they also mirror our lives. Now I would like to introduce you to my wonderful and creative student, Ruby, who will talk to you about her project.
I use the Martin Luther King Jr. quote, "Be the best of whatever you are." This quote resonates with me because of my dad. He taught me that if you want to be the best of something, you don't have to be the very best. Just be the best in your level and your area, and that's enough. I put the quote in the books and the sort of rainbow-looking thing in my drawing. I don't really have a specific reason, I just thought it would look pretty cool. I don't have my entire future planned out. Near the bottom, I have a picture of shapes, 3D shapes. This represents building blocks, since I still have parts of my future I need to figure out.
Oh, all right. Thank you. Love that. Anyone have any questions for Mrs. Gower or Ruby?
Is that what do you plan on entering that in the contest?
So we hope so. This project is turning out to be quite the beast, and the deadline is on Tuesday. So we're cutting it close. But yeah, so this is not finished. It's about, I'd say probably about halfway finished. That's about where most of the students are. So the hope is that the students who want to enter will have theirs done by Friday. I can photograph over the weekend, and then Monday, Tuesday, we spend class time entering. That's the hope. So,
awesome job.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been fantastic.
I love your honesty about you don't have it figured out yet, and you're still working on it, and there's lots of opportunities, so that was great. So anything else?
Yeah, I want to say something. I think your dad is a very smart man. You know, a lot of people think until they're very, very good before they can try. How would you know unless you try? And I'm glad you heed to his advice and you took a step. So that is how you can be your best. Congratulations.
All right. If you would join us up front for a photo, we would love that, please. now we go to board reports, starting with Butler Tech. We had a business advisory meeting since our last meeting, and in that we talked a bit, there were many businesses and students and school leaders that came together. We talked about, again, the expansion of the aviation center. They had us build a little model plane. We talked about AI and its impact and some different local businesses and how everyone looks forward to continuing to build the partnership. So those are the highlights. With that, I'll move to community engagement.
I was out of town the last community engagement, so Doug, you're up.
It's all me. So we have elected to pursue our English language learning community conversations. And they're going to be a little different because we're focusing in on the communities that speak certain languages. So we have a series of them scheduled starting in January. So January 22nd will be the first one, and it will focus in on Nepalese. January 29th will be the second one, focusing on Arabic. February 5th will focus on Vietnamese, and February 12th will focus in on Spanish language speakers. And we're doing it at, remind me the church?
Lakota Hills Baptist Church.
Lakota Hills Baptist Church.
On Tylersville.
On Tylersville. They already have community gatherings with these community groups, and so we're kind of just joining into that experience there. So we're really excited to be able to offer this, and it'll be open to anybody in the community as well. So it's not just people who are already attending there.
Great. Anything else?
We did talk a little bit about the cell phone policy that we're working towards. So families should be seeing, families and students, which I'll go into detail about, should be seeing that quantitative survey very soon. So as you know, we gathered data, qualitative data from the Thought Exchange and from the in-person community conversation. So we're going to follow that up with a quantitative survey that will go out to all K through 12 parents. It will also go out to 7 through 12 students. And then we'll also go out to K through 12 staff. So we'll have all three stakeholder groups participating in that. And really that will give us kind of the final slice of data that we need to add to our research and to add to our qualitative data so that then we can start to form a draft around that policy. We are looking to have a draft of that in January, February-ish that we can share with our community. And the reason for that is nothing will change during the 24-25 school year, but we want to make sure that we have really good communication going into the 25-26 school year so that people can plan ahead and nothing will be a surprise to start the year. So again, even though we will have that new policy in place in the spring, nothing will be fully implemented until the next year.
Great. Anything else?
That's it.
All right. Finance Committee, do you want to field that one?
Did we?
Yeah,
We met in Beckett.
we just reviewed the 5-year forecast, so what Adam goes over tonight will be much of what was discussed in finance. So it is amazing the level of detail that we get to and we're able to see and how that's built and with all the assumptions that everyone else can see when that's sent out. So look forward to Adam's presentation of round 2 of the 5-year forecast.
And also, it's good that in Finance Committee, we actually made a change to the forecast as
Yep.
we discussed it more,
Yeah.
so.
There's so
Good,
many things
good
hap-
committee work.
So many things happening.
All right, we'll move to board professional development. We spoke about that we had all just attended the Ohio School Board Association Capital Conference, which is where a conference every year up in Columbus where they bring school leaders from all the different districts in the state and have very helpful different breakout sessions. You get to pick what you'd like to talk about or what you'd like to hear. So I don't know if anyone has anything specific they'd like to share from Capital Conference.
Yeah, I think this year was, I enjoyed this year a lot more than previous years, maybe because of more time with Capital Conference. I'm beginning to figure out what I need to do. Particularly, I was excited on one of the sessions that I attended, which is the parental rights. A lot of highlights and some updates on House Bill number 8, which will address a lot of family concerns regarding separating what teachers and the roles of teachers and parents. We also hear that sometimes there are some things teachers can handle without the consent of parents. So with that bill being passed, if it passes, I think it's going to address a lot of that. I know, for me, I believe that teachers should focus more on teaching students on learning, and if there are concerns, of course, parents should always be parents. Parents teach their kids whatever values they think is good for their family, and teachers stay on teaching. So I really, really enjoyed that session. And another session that I really, really enjoyed was the most common board meeting mistakes. There are a lot of mistakes that many board members make, not knowing that those minor things can create risk or liabilities. And those were some of the things I know I'm going to be ensuring that in our meetings I follow those. So that's my basic highlight.
All right, anybody else?
So this was my first Capitol Conference. So I attended all of the learn everything there is to know about being a new board member sessions. So I learned a ton about finance, policy, efficiency. I also was intrigued by one of the policies, House Bill 214, that talked about religious expression days. And our students now have, they have the right to take 3 days per school year if they announce it at the beginning of the year to take part in religious activities or celebrations that are unique to them. And so I'm anxious to see how that comes out too in our ELL conversations. I think that'll be an important part of that, to share that information with some of them, and of course with the rest of the district as well. But I just had a great time. There was a lot of really great networking with our colleagues, also with colleagues from other school districts. I learned a lot of really relevant information that you can take away immediately and use in everyday board life. So I really appreciated the opportunity to attend.
I'll share my perspective. This is my second one, so that was exciting. I really enjoyed having the executive leadership team join with us, helped with team building, but also sharing different perspectives of the things that they were engaging on during that week. There was a lot of sessions. The one that I think I focused in a lot, given the master facility planning that we have in store, a lot on what different communities and different districts have done in that process. And one of the most interesting ones that I attended involved basically some really unique ways of thinking about the spaces of our buildings to reflect the pedagogy of the schooling of the education that we have in the district. And so when you look at things like project-based learning and exploration of different ways to use space instead of just the raw square footage calculation, one, it was very enabling and allowed you to do really neat community building within larger buildings, but also really allowed all of the space to be fully utilized during the day and expanded your opportunities to use the space. So there's a lot of learning and a lot of examples, and I'm really excited to apply some of that.
It's interesting because without even discussing it, we all picked different tracks, so to speak. I did a lot of the legal and legislative updates, bills that are pending, bills that are coming. I also did a lot in the mental health field and educating the whole child and what teachers deal with on a daily basis when they have challenges at home that prevents them barriers from learning. So for me, that was really interesting how it takes a village, and the teachers are tasked with a lot of different avenues and different things they have to deal with. So my focus was mostly on legislative, legal updates. I don't know why I've become a legal nerd, so to speak, and then educating a lot of the mental health. So, and this was my seventh time, and I have to say, Ohio does a good job. We had a lot. It was hard to pick. Most times, there was 3 or 4 sessions in one time slot that I would have liked to have gone through.
That's
so
right.
I felt like there was a lot of interesting, and it's always fun to, hang with our colleagues and the exec team. So it was a good conference.
Yep. And it's nice they also post the handouts, so you can check out even the ones you missed. You can go back and read. Again, I think I kind of flipped amongst the different types. I was with Doug and the one I think we both found most interesting on facilities. I was in some different, there were a lot of legal ones this year, which I think speaks to the environment. So even though I went to several of those, it was different than the ones Kelly were in, and I also found it interesting, some of them contradicted one another. And so I think it just goes to show how quickly school law is evolving with some different changes, and it's hard to keep up. So, yeah, what people have historically done and would refer to that, it's like, yeah, that's probably not something that you still should be doing. So that was kind of interesting to me as well. One I went to was on being the board president, and it spoke a lot too that we get our power from the collective and that we are all equal. So regardless of your role on the board as president, you are still equal. And I think, again, sometimes people don't realize that there is no one of us that has more of a say or a vote than anyone else. And another piece that they spoke of that I just thought they worded it well, it says approach conflict with curiosity. And I think that that's a great way to approach, because there's always going to be different push and pulls, and always to try to see how we can learn and do better. So that was an interesting one. One of the legislative pieces I'll just mention that I liked was that they're talking about putting cameras on the outside of buses. I know for our community that's been a concern, is some of the lack of attention to bus commands and bus stop signs, and there's looking like there will be legislation that will allow cameras that can then issue a ticket even if there's not a police officer present. So again, a lot of great information, always makes you want to have more time, which is great at a conference because that's not always the case. So with that, anything else from either of you two that?
I always think it's interesting how everybody's issues seem to be very similar. It's just everybody's got a different size amplifier. Ours is much larger than other schools, but they have very, very similar issues. And also wanted to congratulate Doug on beating everybody in duck pin bowling.
Oh, thank you.
Luckily, I was not
He
there.
was very aggressive with that.
He
little ball.
was, he was.
Hidden skills.
So having been to Capitol Conference numerous times, this was my first time with our new team. And it just reminded me not only it's exciting to learn together, but it's also exciting to relax together and just get to know each other as people. And so I think we learned about business, but we also learned about just how we operate as people, and that was exciting to build that camaraderie together and with the executive team as a whole governance body.
Great. All right. We also have committee and community conversation meeting and dates. Again, that is available online through Board Docs, should anyone like to refer to that. We're now moving to administrative reports, and we have the 5-year forecast presentation first.
Okay, if anybody needs to stand up and stretch before we get into this, this would be a good time. So it's that time of year again. We have to approve the forecast in November and again in May, not later than November and May. So purpose of the forecast has not changed. This is a 3-year of actual history along with 5 years of forecasted. So this November forecast removes fiscal year 21 from our historical, and it adds in fiscal 29 to our actuals, or to our forecasted rather. This is only a snapshot based on the information we have at this time. It's going to change. It's not etched in stone. It's just very fluid. But this is based around what we have at this moment. And again, this is a legal requirement that we bring this to the board so that everybody's in the loop and we can know where we're headed. So this is a picture of our operating revenues. This is for fiscal 25. So our local revenues make up just over 70% overall of Lakota's revenues. Notable revenue assumptions for fiscal year 25, the current year, is we did see with the second half real estate collection, we saw a little bit of a decrease or an increase in our delinquency. We were able to see what tax year 23 actually brought in. Previous year we were at about a 1%. This year we came in at a 1.5. So even with the large increase in property tax valuation, we did see a slight increase in the delinquency, which would kind of be expected, seeing that it did change in value. But still very, very stable compared to a lot of other districts, only a 1.5%, and that will true up over time. Another thing to keep in mind is interest rates. We are seeing the interest rates take a decrease, which, although is a positive sign for our economy, does result in a little bit lower revenue for Lakota local schools. So if we did see a change to that, if the interest rates started dropping too quickly, then we could see a little bit of inflation come back in. So we'll keep monitoring that as we go forward. State funding, we are still showing as a guaranteed school district. Right now in fiscal year 25, we're just a little over $6 million onto the guarantee. So what that essentially means, so everybody follows this, is it means we're currently getting more revenue than the state funding model would say we should get. So although it's positive, it's still flatline basically on the state side. Another thing that we've added in, this began in fiscal 25, generated about $500,000 per year to the school district, is indirect costs. This is a tool that we can use to charge for services that we provide that are federal or grants. So that's a way that kind of the paying for administrative services and all that, we have the ability to offset that. So we did bring that in. Sorry about that. Okay, so challenges to the future operating revenue. We do have a tax reappraisal coming in 2026. As mentioned in the previous meeting, we have that as Class 1 set to 24.5. 24.5 would hit us to the 20 mil floor. That would not be below the floor, or not below the floor, but rather some of the windfall of, that other districts had talked about, or that we had heard this time last year. That wouldn't result in that, but it would get us to that point. So that's something to keep in mind. We are also forecasting our Class 2, which is industrial and commercial property, by about 10%. So relatively in line with previous reappraisals, with the exception of the hyperinflation that we've been seeing on the residential side. Another thing to keep in mind is House Bill 271. House Bill 271 could potentially result in a negative impact to Lakota's collections. We are not forecasting this as an actual at this time. It's just something that could be in the pipeline. It's a Senate bill to seek a limit to the growth in the reappraisal cycles. So it's going to combine income and property tax growth and limit to a 5% increase to qualified taxpayers. So although this seems to be the hot topic right now on the real estate tax front, I really think it would be challenging to implement. So, because then it would kind of create some disparity within our tax district. So it'll be interesting to see how some of this shakes out, as they have referenced that the tax reform is supposed to have some information back by the end of this calendar year. Okay. Next slide is operating revenues historical. So interesting enough, if you look at a 3 prior year, we're averaging about a 2.2% increase. If you go out to a 5-year, it's a 3.2. And the 12 years as shown of the actual is a 3.1. So something to keep in mind. This also reflects the forecasted amounts, but the actuals go through fiscal year 24 on this. I tried to make the slide a little bit bigger for the people in the audience, so it may be a little tricky to see still. Now, the slide that we always like to talk about is the mills and how we calculate this. So this time last year, we were looking at the growth in tax year 23. That was $120,000 in the change from the prior year. After the reappraisal, that is $1.3 million. So that 37% increase that we realized did have a dramatic increase. However, something to keep in mind, it will all keep rolling back as we get to the 20 mil floor. So on this slide, as you can see, in tax year 23, there's the large decrease. That was on Class 1, took about a 6.4 mil drop due to the large increase. Then we'll see some marginal growth as you go across, but then again, when the reappraisal happens, this is showing it based on the 24.5%. That would decrease again where it would stay flat at that 20 mil. So something for illustrative purposes so that everybody knows what the difference between on and off the floor actually means is for Lakota at this time, if you have a 1% increase, it would generate about $230,000 net of the homestead and rollback, which is the portion the state picks up. If you were on the floor, it would be about $711,000 per 1%. So it is definitely a much more dramatic change, but then it would stabilize that until the legislation changed, essentially. So this is the charts that show Westchester versus Liberty Townships. So currently, Lakota Schools makes up 57.8%. This is the overall tax bill for Westchester. So this doesn't just include our operating dollars, which is what's forecasted. This includes the permanent improvement levy as well as debt service. So this is all in. So we are 57.8% for Westchester and 61.5% for Liberty Township. As you can see in these charts, Lakota school millage is the exact same in both. It's just Liberty Township has a lower overall millage rate. Okay, so now over to the operating expenses. Salaries and benefits, as shown on the chart, makes up 75.5% for Lakota Schools, which on the surface would seem to be a bit low, but that's also because we contract out the transportation, which makes up a large cost. So overall, if you bring in salaries, benefits, and purchase services, that makes up about 93% for us. So the notable expenditure assumptions for fiscal year 25. Biggest one, of course, is going to be wages. We did have a rollover of the bargaining agreements that takes them through fiscal year 26 now. They were set to expire with 25 being the new one, and fiscal 25 seen a 4% increase there. Then healthcare is a bit trickier because it is on a calendar year, and the forecast, the fiscal year ends at the end of June. So because of that, we have a little bit of a blend for fiscal year 25, the 25% increase that we realized last year, and then the overall increase of 7% that we realized this year. So fiscal 25 would actually, on the numbers, reflect closer to about a 15% increase, even though that was the actual results. Once we get beyond fiscal 26, that's the last year for the blend, we're still going to forecast 4% at this time for the rest of the years out through 29. I guess I got a little ahead of myself there. Another thing is transportation. Transportation within our purchase services, that makes up 54% of the overall purchase service budget. So that is definitely a large expenditure, just a little over $22 million this year for Lakota. SRO contracts are made up there as well. That's part of those other services. And this forecast is reflective of, like mentioned at the last meeting, that these services are actually provided. That is where we're at now. Last year we had a lot of canceled services, even though we had contracted for them, so we didn't realize that expenditure. Now we're forecasting that we're back to getting those filled. And then finally, we still have curriculum rotations that are built in and projected to continue throughout the forecasted period. Okay, so the future operating expenditure challenges. So again, we have the contract negotiations that would be set to be fiscal year 27, 28, 29, or the last 3 years of the forecast. That was something, as we reviewed in the Finance Committee, we actually changed that assumption from a 1 to a 2%, just for planning purposes at this time. Could be more, could be less, just we'll see how that kind of shakes out based around historical. Healthcare making up another very large percentage of our overall budget. STRS change, this is a new one that came in last week. So with the STRS change, certified staff will be able to retire after 33 years of service to begin June 25th, I believe it is, of 2025. So with that, we may see an increase of some retirees here at Lakota just because we have so many staff. But if we do see that, then that could result in a retire replacement. It would result in a lower cost overall. So that could have a positive impact on the expenditures, although we would most likely see an increase to our severance payouts for this year. So that could be good news for the overall budget, although we don't want to see any of our people leave unless they are ready to retire.
Right.
So again, transportation, that's always going to be, we've got a 3% increase forecasted in. Also, we did see an increase just based around the fuel due to no bus strikes this year, back to this year. No bus strikes. We had 6 routes per year or per day canceled. So because of that, the fuel should see a little bit of an increase. Another master facility plan. Based around where we end up with the master facility plan, that could have an impact in the 5 years of this forecast. because potentially, depending on when that started, when we would get kids in, you know, all of that, that could happen within fiscal '29 based on some of the latest projections that we've seen. Although we're not forecasting that at this time, when you would really start to see actual forecasting changes would be once we would have a bond passed and we had a very, very firmed up timeline on that with some plans. So that's when we would start being able to operationally change these assumptions. And then again this year we have new leadership on the slide. As we all know, new leadership, new strategic planning that can bring some new initiatives, maybe some new, maybe some coming in, some going away, but we will plan that as they come. Very excited to get that going and get a strategic plan up and moving. Again, on the operating expense side, this is the historical. Prior 3 years of that is actually 4.3, so in relation to the 2.2 in the revenue. So our expenditures, as normal, have kind of increased a bit over the revenues, but with state funding being flatlined for the most part, with just some component funding changing, that's kind of the result of that. 5 years is a 4.2, and then overall 12 years is actually a 2.6. So when we look at a longer timeline, that brings some of that down. So this chart, again, we brought this one in last year. This chart is good because the green line is showing the cash balance. The black line is showing the revenue. The red line is the expense, green being cash balance, and then you have the 90-day cash mark, which is the yellow line, and then the orange line would make that 150-day cash mark. That would be the opposite end of that policy that we have in place. We actually hit the 90-day mark now with the updated assumptions. We hit that in fiscal 28, exactly on 90 days, with fiscal 29 bringing us in at 71. So that's something that Dr. Whiteley and I will begin making plans on to bring to the board per policy to see what we can do or what directions we may want to take. So summary is local revenue makes up the largest portion for Lakota schools. State makes up about 30% of that. All expense is still going to be very critical that we keep an eye on, and we look for returns on investment, how we feel is the best way to spend all of these dollars. So as always, the forecast, it is just a forecast. This will change by May. We'll be able to talk about why it changed and all that fun stuff, but this is just a snapshot so that you guys can have an idea of what the picture kind of looks like based around today's planning. And then finally, this is only one of many different fiscal information pieces that we provide yearly and all the time. So if anyone would like to see any of these are linked so that you can click within the PDF and it'll take you right to any one of those. So that's all I have at this time. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Zink? Are you preparing for a question or just a deep breath?
No, I will ask him this on the side.
Thank you for all your work on this. There also is the 23-page document with the detailed forecast and the detailed assumptions that are linked also in board docs if anyone wants to go through that versus this highlight of what we talked about.
And please take time to read that if you're bored and you really need something to help you go to sleep, because we truly try to get all the information in there that we can to show how we're calculating this. So that's also a part of the evolution for us, is if there's things that you go, hey, this could be more clear, then give me some feedback on that as well, and we'll try to make this as clean and clear and understandable as possible.
And again, I know you spoke to it in there, but you know this is the drama that I always insist on beating is there was a lot of fear when we saw those property reappraisals. But if you look at the actual numbers in the forecast, because of House Bill 920, our local revenue went up 3.5%. So I just want to reiterate that. So should that happen again, and people see that there's not that same level of fear that we saw this year.
And based on the forecast as presented, that wouldn't result in that large increase that everybody was talking about this time last year, because that would just get us to the floor. That wouldn't That wouldn't, if it was above that, then you would see some of those, the calculation would be off 20 mils, where today for Lakota, that's based off of 6.49 mils. That's what our inside millage is.
So if nobody's taxes went up 37%.
Well, unless their value went up by a greater amount than their neighbors, by a much larger increase than that average.
Yeah.
So it's possible, but probably not probable.
Not the norm.
Yeah, correct.
It was not
That
the
is correct.
It was not the norm. I appreciate too all the work you put into this and how you keep it, you know, 5-year forecast for dummies. And I appreciate, I know it's a snapshot in time, but I appreciate that you and Dr. Whiteley are looking, you know, when looks like we might dip below that 90 days, what we can do. And I expect that, and by May, maybe that changes and we don't dip below until, you know, 2031 or whatever. But I do appreciate that.
It is kind of interesting that although we're on the guarantee, and that's a negative, because if the guarantee went away, that would be a large decrease for us.
Right.
Now the state's talking about their financial stability might be changing a bit, and so now there's some schools that are getting a little antsy because they're on the cap side of that, and they're wanting to see that increased revenue, where that removes some of that risk for us unless the guarantee was to go away. But we're still flatlined, so it's still not wonderful, but we don't have as much variance.
Any other questions or anything for Adam? All right, Dr. Whiteley.
We are going to talk about the Lakota Value Added State Report Card presentation. So I'm going to invite some team members up here. As you know, in our last, not this month, but in October, we gave the report card overview. And as you remember, Value Added is not released at the same time as the regular components of the report card. And so there is a lag. That's why you didn't see it at that point. So we got that data several weeks after the original report card data. Value Added is looking at growth data. So if you remember, really the two weightiest parts of the state report card are achievement, right, and growth. And so this is just kind of giving you that full snapshot, and we're going to lead you through some of those details and also talk to you about some of the action plans that we've put in place and will put in place around that.
Good evening. Thanks for having us tonight. I'll be up here a couple times acting as an MC for the Curriculum and Instruction Department. But as Dr. Whiteley said, we have some more information for you since the last time we presented on the report card. And I'd like to invite Mr. Justin Wilson up here to talk to us a little bit about our value-added data. What you'll see in this presentation tonight is that we focused a lot on how we use this data because it's very personalized to students and teachers. And we'll give you some insight into how we use that data and what we see in that data this year. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Wilson.
Yes, as Dr. Whiteley said, this was the one kind of missing piece. We knew the overall rating, but this is a little the deeper dive and I think some of the most actionable data for both our teachers and our administrators, our curriculum department. So at where we left off, again, we know that this was one of the biggest drivers, this progress, this growth data was one of the biggest drivers in our increase in overall report card, which we're very, very proud of. So just a real brief introduction for what this progress value added, how that data is calculated. We'll look at our 3-year trends very briefly, and then very briefly the focus on the strategic action, how we use these important data points. So again, value-added data, it essentially is measuring student achievement from one year to the next. What's nice about value-added data is it takes wherever the kid is starting at, and did we grow that student, no matter where they fit on the continuum of learning. Did they grow in a year's worth of growth or not? It's on a continuum of standard deviations. 0 would indicate essentially 1 year's growth, exactly what needs to happen. Anything farther to the positive means more than expected growth. Less, of course, would be less than a year's growth. We know that was an issue in the past, that we were probably not making overall, collectively, the growth that we needed to, achievement from year to year. But now we are strongly into that far right side of it. Anything that is 2 standard deviations above 0 or greater, that is considered well above expected growth. And that, as you'll see here in more of the in-depth data, we definitely have moved in that direction in a fast way. So the data, again, from the report card, it takes into account 3 years of data to determine that 4 stars that we got for the progress component. But what's the really impressive part is we know that the previous 2 years, before this most recent set of data, those were, again, some pretty negative numbers. But our 1 year was so high that if we would have just had that by itself, just last year by itself, we would have been a 5-star in terms of progress. So it's really carried us, and so the hope is that if we continue in the practices we have, we're going to continue to see that number to be a very positive, and then overall those 2 lesser years will fall off. Here's the course by course or grade by grade breakdown. I like this visual because it shows you some of the trends. You have the English language arts, 4th through 8th grade, followed by math, 4th through 8, science, which is just 5 and 8, and then our high school courses. And overwhelmingly, you can see all of our English from 4 to 8 plus high school. Those are all very high into that blue area that shows there's a strong evidence that we've exceeded the growth that was expected, which is fantastic. We really see a lot of things moving from orange to green and green into blue. There are still a couple of subject areas where we have areas for continued growth. We're still looking at our junior high math data. We're still looking very much at our 5th and 8th grade science data, some of which is going to be addressed by the implementation of our new curriculum this year in math, as well as the processes we start looking at science instruction over the next 2 years. So there are some areas we're certainly still concentrating on, and of course we want to continue those growth trends over the course of time. But overall, we're very pleased with the visual and in the direction we're making across the board. Scatter plots, this is one of the data points that the state tends to really highlight. This shows us the big picture of all districts in Ohio. This is the growth growth versus performance index, so achievement versus growth. Growth on the y-axis, performance there on the x. And the best place to be for any district is in that upper right-hand quadrant, in quadrant 2, because that means high growth and high achievement. So in 2022 and 2023, we saw that while our achievement was relatively high, as we all know, our growth wasn't where we wanted it to be, but we've solidly moved above that 0 line, and now we're up in that quadrant we want to, and while also still making some incremental gains in our performance and our achievement as well. All right, so the last 4 slides we have are just about the strategic action. This data that we're getting that ends up ultimately in those sort of summary slides, what are we doing with that data? Well, one thing is our systematic supports. I'll start with a couple of our secondary schools. We know they have, at high schools, they have an XH time, like a study hall that can be targeted. Our junior highs have advisory time or core time. Elementaries have different cluster groups that they can pull out. And what we've done is by looking at certain courses, we've seen where are some of our biggest deficiencies in value added. We know that high school government was one of our issues. So we started digging into some of the value added data we get and realized that one of our easiest areas to address were the students who were taking summer school government, but then weren't taking the state assessment until the fall, several months after they had put down the material. And so our great high school teachers at East and West of government, they got together and said, hey, you know what? Free us up during our XH, and what we're going to do is use this data to see which kids still need to take this assessment. We're going to see where their strengths and deficiencies are, and we're going to do some review in the weeks leading up to the assessment. They did that, and again, to very high yield. So that was one great way of leveraging just the daily schedule in a really informative way. Our junior highs do that a lot with their core groups, their advisor groups. They'll look at like this pie chart down here of what groups are most at risk to not pass, which ones not only should pass, but they should really be projected to be in the accomplished or advanced range, and they actually develop small groups for tutorial and enrichment based upon that. Our elementaries, we know that they've used some of this data to determine how well some of our new programs are working. Our math at ELA Plus, this is a great way to sort of gauge how those are moving along. Or our English language learners, how our systems of supports and our new curriculums are working for that. So these are some ways that we can look at sort of a grade level or course level data to sort of monitor our practices from the district level as well as from the individual schools. The second area is professional development. One thing we know, and we spoke about this, I think, at the last board meeting, is really wanting to promote more and more students taking rigorous classes when we know that they're capable of doing that. Part of that is professional development with our teachers, and so we spent some time really looking at some of the advanced placement projections for students, and what is the College Board who drives the advanced placement? What are some best practices in terms of classroom to make it both inviting and also build the rigor our students need, rigorous habits to be successful? So we've used a lot of the value-added data for that, as well as just the broader perspective of our Marzano strategies, our Lakota framework. That's been consistent in all of our buildings, K-12. And what I've sliced out here this is from one of the subjects that we have here, but that compares teacher ratings. They're also in the blue, the green, or the orange. And you see there Lakota on the left versus the state overall to the right. And we see we have a higher balance of blue and green, if you will, than the state. And we see that in a lot of the different sub areas. And we think that is, again, due to some strategic focus on really what our high yield best strategies are. Student goal setting. This really gets to that individual student and individual classroom level. You've heard us reference a few times the bell by bell data that we put together, where all of our teachers see what our students' projections are, again, from the system. What is their probability of being proficient or being advanced or being accomplished? And we have that, and then our teachers can start setting goals with their students, and then we measure that through map data, through classroom assessments, through the readiness system. We can compare that data and see our students on track to making those goals. We've really seen the power of where the teacher relationship and the student goal setting, how those two are such a powerful tool together, because kids want to do well for their teachers. Of course, they want to do well for the family, and this gives a little bit of quantifiable data to go with the really qualitative work that's going on in our classrooms. So that's an important piece that we have, and it drives, again, a lot of the goal setting and the instruction and the intervention we do as we get closer and closer to the spring testing. And then course placement. And again, I apologize, looks like our slide got a little bit rearranged there, but that's okay. But another thing is that course placement piece. Again, this goes back to systematically trying to make sure that kids are getting into the proper classes. It starts with the advanced matrix we use for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, trying to expand the on-ramps. We use the value-added projections to make sure kids that we know have the likelihood of being successful have a chance to go in there. It's one of the data points we use. Having our high school teachers talk to our kids about the likelihood of success on the taking the AP courses for the following year. I literally had that about an hour ago. I had a chemistry teacher say, hey, the department chair at one of our high schools, she said, can you get me all the projections for all of our kids that are in chemistry, because our teachers want to have talks with the kids about who might be a great candidate for AP chemistry next year. I said, absolutely, that's the kind of data we love to pull out for you. And that's happening, again, at all grade levels. So a lot of great things that are happening, again, just trying to empower our kids, our families to make the best decisions they can to continue to move towards the best possible situation as they come through Lakota schools. And that is the conclusion of that brief update. If there's any questions.
Questions? Christina? No? Doug?
I have some questions.
Sure.
Thank you for the presentation. I want to call out, it is really exciting to see the progress made on ELA, especially. It shows that with intention and planning and implementation, you can achieve really dramatic results. I'm really concerned about the math and science at the junior high scores, and I've been critical of that we haven't seen progress on that over the past couple years, and it feels like we're in the same place that we've been in the past couple years, which is we're hoping to see progress, and hopefully the new curriculum will help. I'd love to understand, what specifically is looking to be done to turn around those results. And one thing I'd love to see as a takeaway from after this is I love the scatter plots that you showed for English. I think it's really indicative of like not just where we are from a growth standpoint, but also from achievement and some of those challenges. I'd love to see that for the 7th and 8th grade math and science. But I think especially going into this year, I'd love to see these turn around this year. I think it's our best opportunity for value added, and I'd love to understand a little bit deeper details on what that intervention plan looks like.
We can get you that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm glad to see that we are pushing kids a little bit. That, you know, monitoring where they are and knowing that they can do more than they're doing. I love that we've got on-ramps now, that we're not just, it's not that, what, 5th grade COGAT test and that defines your, you know, the rest of your educational career. So I do appreciate that we have other on-ramps and that we're trying to let kids push them a little, because I think they want to be, and I think that they can be. I think our kids are, you know, ready for that. So thank you for that.
Other things? I'd also, I think, again, I don't know that we fully appreciate what a big lift this was to go from 2 to 4. I mean, that, especially with a 3-year average. So appreciate all the attention to detail and the data, and actually doing it at a student level. So no child is left behind, whether it's a student with special needs, an English language learner, a gifted student, a typical student. You know, everyone has had that data looked into. So I appreciate that detail. And look forward to that continued growth as we continue. I know seeing where we are ranked in the state and seeing us back in that top quarter versus being in that bottom quarter, which none of us were comfortable with, I think we all are very thankful for all the work. And I know it was a complete team lift from the central office to every single person in the building. So thank you for that attention to that work. So, any other questions or thoughts?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, we move to treasurer's recommendations, A through C. We have approval of board minutes, approval of monthly financial reports, and approval of the November submission of the 5-year forecast. Do I have a motion for approval of A, B, and C?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Adam, please call the roll.
Ms. Casper?
Yes.
Mr. Horton?
Yes.
Mr. D?
Yes.
Ms. French?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes. The motion carries. Now we have superintendent's recommendations, A through E, approval of personnel items, approval of field trips, program of study approval, approval of thought exchange contract, and the approval of donations. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
So for field trips, just to draw your attention, we are approving an Independence Elementary field trip to Camp Campbell Guard in May. That's an outdoor educational learning experience. And just a reminder on that, for our for our volunteers that attend that, they do go through a more extensive Raptor process than even what your kind of day-to-day visitors to a building do, because they are, you know, like an overnight or field trip volunteer. So they are, so that's slated for May, so just getting that in early. And then you also have a couple of Lakota West wrestling matches, just part of invitationals and things that we're approving. Curriculum department's going to talk a little bit about program of study overview here in just a second. So as they make their way up, I will also talk about the thought exchange contract. As you know, this is how we garner input from our community, particularly around community conversations or ideas where we just want to make sure that we have something a little bit more of a dialogue base than maybe a survey base. This is for a 2-year contract that would be expiring in 26. I do know that in the past we've had some feedback just about that interchange and the validity of that, but we again made sure to just double check all the details, and we feel that that very much is a solid source. So program of studies, not a lot of great changes here that you're going to see, but I do just kind of want to walk you through these. A program of studies, just so that we make sure we're all talking the same language. You might hear me say from my previous experience a course guide, okay, or a program of studies. But what that means really is the scope of course offerings and kind of the structures or systems that align that, like schedule changes, things of that nature, that encompass our high schools and our junior highs. And I also love, and I'm going to commend us for doing this, this is not something that in my previous experience schools always did, but we call this a 7 through 12 program of studies. We often think of junior high separate from maybe a freshman experience or a high school experience. It really is not. You know, even in the state of Ohio's eyes, a career path or a college path or a life path or an enlistment path, it starts in the 7th grade because that's when a lot of credit-bearing options or CCP or honors classes open up. So it really is a comprehensive look starting in the junior high, although a 12-year-old might not tell you that right from their experience, but it really is a 7 through 12 look. So not a lot of changes here, but just wanted to take the time to have Lori and team kind of go through those. Particularly probably the heaviest is in math, but again, walking you through that so that if you have any questions, we can address those.
Yeah, thank you. This isn't as many changes as you've seen in the past couple of years, so it'll be a short presentation tonight. But I do want to emphasize before I turn it over to Justin Frost that there is a great connection between the information that Justin Wilson just shared with us and what you're about to hear from Mr. Frost. We really utilize all the data at our fingertips to make our best decisions about what kind of courses we're offering and what kind of opportunities we're preparing for our students. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Frost.
Good evening. Really excited about talking about some of the updates and changes for 2025-2026, but something that I wanted to highlight was we've made a lot of changes over the past 5 years that we've seen a lot of positive growth and dividends from, with the focus being of expanding rigorous and rich opportunities for our kids to engage with that type of work at school. Couple just to highlight the expansion of the math pathways, CCP expansion that you saw from last year, as well as some of our other electives. And one of the most things that we're proud of is that in the 23-24, we looked at our simple tally data, especially at the high schools. And you know, one of the worries you have when you bring on additional CCP courses is, what is that going to do to your advanced placement courses, your other honors courses? And happy to report that especially in our core, our math, English, science, social studies, we saw a 31% average increase in AP, while also having an increase in these new courses as well. And I think that shout out really should be to our teachers and to our counselors and to our building folks who are able to have those one-on-one conversations with kids, leveraging the data that Mr. Wilson was talking about as well, and encouraging kids and saying, you know, you can do this, this is for you, when appropriate, obviously. But it's showing that there is growth, and there is clearly students are coming from college prep classes and finding a place in CCP and AP as well. So that was something we were excited about. Additionally, for CCWM, we saw roughly a 20% jump in that percentage between last year and this year, and that's indicative of a lot of these changes. But again, the shout out goes to the buildings and the people working with the kids as well. As far as junior high, if you take a look at the social studies piece, that is a continuation of what was presented on last year. It's really unpacking and uncompacting the 7th and 8th grade social studies curriculum. And the purpose behind it is to have that really solid world history as well as first half of American history foundation before you go into a modern world history type of situation. It's a more appropriate and a deeper dive into those topics to really have that rich foundation, which if you look down into 26-27, we already have a cohort of students at the 9th grade level who are taking AP Human Geography, which is a world history equivalent. By unpacking these two courses, you will have a richer foundation and opportunity for success on that AP Human Geo class as well. So very excited about that. As far as under the ESL heading, what you'll see as you look in those documents is a naming update, which will better align and capture what work is happening there, how students are placed, and really it's an alignment to the adopted curriculum resource that was approved last year, and just kind of putting those things in alignment was that. But really, same work, kind of a different naming convention on that one. As far as the high school goes, we're excited about the opportunity to separate CCP communications and CCP literature to expand opportunities. As current, you take both of those classes, one semester, one the other. This will provide the opportunity for maybe a student might be interested in one and not the other. Maybe they would be interested in both. Maybe their schedule would be such that they only have one opening. So giving more opportunities for kids to have flexibility in those CCP type of courses. And additionally as well on the math piece, we're excited to bring on AP Pre-Calculus as a new course as well that we would like to bring forth. We would not be losing the CCP pre-calculus course that your typical students would take after honors Algebra 2. They would then typically, as of this year and previous, move into that CCP honors pre-calculus course. That will turn into CCP pre-calculus, and the students who would be on a typical trajectory of taking AP Calculus A, B, and BC would first take an AP pre-calculus course. So the thought behind it is, again, it's better alignment to the next course that comes. I would take AP pre-calc if my trajectory is to take A, B, and BC, and also provide a rigorous and deep and rich opportunity for other students who have college and career aspirations that would include a pre-calculus mode, but will be at more of an appropriate level to where the CCP partner would have that course. And as far as additionally with that, as you move into the second page, it kind of talks about as well, there's opportunities for juniors as well as seniors. That CCP pre-calc course will be an opportunity for seniors to take as well who might not be on that advanced track, but still have an opportunity for it. And we see as outcomes, you'll see potentially a slight decrease in CCP, but you're going to see an increase in AP because of the shift. But our anticipation as well is that the CCP course is going to be approachable, it's going to be rigorous, it's going to be rich, it's going to be something that will be needed and wanted and desired by students, so that we'll have all three of those pathways for students to engage with as far as math goes on the back end as far as junior and senior year. As far as the bottom goes, the ESL piece, we continue to work with our ESL team to update those naming conventions, and that would be the same that you would see for the junior as well as the high school program of study description. But just in closing for me, just from using the value add data or EVOS projections that we can use, we're really excited about the opportunity to coach and to promote and to encourage our students to take the next step and to get into courses that they are truly capable of and ready to go for, and finding that success. So if there's any questions.
Questions?
Honors Pre-Cal, or AP Pre-Cal, is a fairly new course for College Board. It's only been in existence about 3 years now. Prior to that, Pre-Cal was kind of in that pre-AP track that they used to talk about for AP teachers in College Board. But really, you know, even though it's called Pre-Cal, right, it is a very different nomenclature, vocabulary, even than calculus or Calc 2 and things of that nature. And so they decided, because of the differentiation between the two curriculums, it could really stand to be its own solid standalone AP course. Have had great data around that in the last several years that it's been offered as far as passage rate on that. So look to have an exciting offering for our students who are just kind of normally in that trajectory to have an opportunity to engage with that and get possible AP credit as well.
Great.
For the high school math, will both AP and CCP be considered honors, or will it only be AP?
The AP course will be the honors designation, but with the laws around CCP as well, you would have the weighting would be the same for the two courses.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question on, so with the elimination of the high school credits on some of the junior high social studies class, you had mentioned the AP Human Geo that people were taking in 9th grade. Will they still be able to do that and fulfill the different requirements in the high school?
I think it's a benefit, it's a good move by the state that can count as your world history credit.
Okay.
And you have that honors component, you have the weighting to that particular course. It's a fun course as well, getting the opportunity to learn about the various cultures and countries that go along with it. But by uncompacting that curriculum, as a former social studies teacher, that is a good move to have that solid foundation for success. I will also mention that we have been tracking our freshmen who have been taking the course with the compacted curriculum, and they have performed at or above those of the upperclassmen. So with this move, our anticipation is that you will see even a greater increase. And again, that's a shout out to the students, their families, and we have really good teachers.
Great.
And as far as AP, College Board and Social Studies is where you have the vast array of electives. And so really making sure that they have that solid foundation on which to build on all of those electives. I mean, normally we think of U.S. history, for juniors or sophomores, depending on the school. But really the world is your oyster as far as College Board in terms of Social Studies. So making sure that they have that really firm foundation on which to enter as freshmen sets them up to do some great things in other offerings.
It also seems with some of these changes, we'll have an opportunity for more kids to have an honors diploma and have access to that. So is that a thought that will be?
One of the things we've been talking about preliminarily in the curriculum department is not only the honors diploma, but also just our graduation requirements in general. Getting ready to kind of take a fresh dive into those to make sure they are as rigorous as they need to be, that they're in line with other caliber high schools that are around us or maybe not around us in the state. And then making sure that we are really utilizing, when we talk about utilizing a master schedule to its fullest potential so that students can have experiences in learning, rigorous experience, transcript experiences. So really we are going to be taking a deep dive into those graduation requirements and then making sure that once we get the strategic plan aligned, that those align well. Because I do think we have some room for growth in our graduation requirements currently, just to make sure that we are competitive and truly a destination district of what those might look like.
And I would add with that AP Human Geo is a great introductory AP course. It is rigorous, it is challenging, but it is also a good one to start with. And if you have that positive success early, you're going to take more. And that will have an impact on our CCWM, as well as just the opportunity for kids to get more potential college credit and opportunities to take classes that are challenging and fun.
Yeah, well, and I know AP US History was often one of the first ones kids took, and that was pretty hard.
Yeah, it's pretty
I still
rigorous,
remember
yeah.
in a parent meeting, the teacher saying, he's like, your kids probably haven't really been too challenged thus far, and I am their brick wall. I was like, all right then. And it was a challenge for some different students. So when will our families have access? I know just here we're being asked to just approve these modifications. When will the full program of studies be available for our families? Do we know that yet?
I think we talked about end of January, 1st of February kind of timeline to make sure we're meeting our master schedule timeline.
Great. All right, any other discussion on any of the topics that we're asking to approve? So just as a reminder, our motion was to approve personnel items, field trip, study, the program of study, thought exchange contract, and donations. Adam, will you please call the roll?
Ms. French?
Yes.
Mr. D?
Yes.
Ms. Casper?
Yes.
Mr. Horton?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes. All right, and with that, we'll move to closing comments. We'll start with Mr. Adib.
No. A lot of excitement in this past week. I'm excited to see our students come to share things of extracurricular activities. The point I was going to tell the students that's how Hollywood starts. When you read books that you love and you begin to memorize and write stuff, you can write movies, you can act movies, you can be anything you want to be. So it's exciting to see all this kind of things being behind the scene, being presented to us. It's exciting, and beside that, I don't have anything else.
Great.
I just want to comment. Thank you for everyone tonight for sharing, especially on the value added. I think that was one of the most exciting results from the report card this year. And it shows just some of the tremendous effort has been put into turning things around. So was really excited to get the additional data, but also to see those results. And so a commendation to everybody who enabled that. Also really love the student spotlights. I want to thank Molly and Bo and Emmett and Ruby for sharing their artwork and their poetry with us. It's something to come up in front of strangers and share your thoughts and your creativity with us. But I also really appreciate the staff integrating those programs. So our MLK program is a fantastic kind of exterior program, and especially our art teachers have done a great job of embracing that and bringing that into their lessons and their education planning. Also seeing a lot of the ELA teachers doing that this year as well, which is really exciting. And I still remember getting excited in elementary school about poetry. My teacher used Shel Silverstein to get us excited about that and some of the poems that he had there. So really excited to see that. And then also Adam and the finance department really appreciate the 5-year forecast, but the work that you guys have done year over year to communicate the information clearly for us to be able to understand, but consistently. So the ability for me to kind of engage on the 5-year forecast and just get right into it and understand it versus redoing formats every year is extremely helpful for us to get to the root of what we're seeing there. I appreciate your approach, and it definitely signals to us the fact that there's things that we need to be looking at as we move forward. But I also appreciate the fact that we're also approaching being in that space between the 90 days and the 150. I think there was a trend for a long time to just be way over the 150, and I don't want to lose sight that we have a job to educate the students when they're here with us. And so I think we're getting back to that middle space, which is a good place to be. And obviously, you know, when you get 4 or 5 years out, it looks a little troubling, but again, those 4-year, 5-year forecasts haven't really lived up to that, so we have plenty of time to adjust as we go. So I think your forecast did a great job of highlighting where we need to focus over the next couple of years to make sure we get in the right spot. So really appreciate all the work to the finance department who delivered that.
Opposite of Doug, and much to Dr. Whiteley's dismay, I did not enjoy the poetry units in elementary school, but had it been presented in that way, I probably would have loved it a whole lot more. I continue to be impressed by our students and their creativity and their ability to take their learning in the classroom and apply it to themselves in their own lives. And with that, I'm also very impressed with our teachers and really diving into the new curriculum and looking at ways to innovate and make connections for our students, which really brings it to life for them. So I also thoroughly enjoyed tonight's presentations by our students. With that, the value add data, I know we talked about this a few weeks ago when we talked about the report card. Congratulations again. That's phenomenal growth that you should be very proud of. Tonight, I especially appreciated the part where we talked about, now what are we going to do, right? So we're going to celebrate, and then tomorrow we're going to wake up and we're going to keep going, right? The celebration seems short. But I really appreciated the look at the future goals and the strategies that are being put in place to make sure that all of our students succeed. And finally, one of the sessions that I attended at Capitol Conference, one of the suggestions that they made was that the treasurer create a 5-year forecast that's understandable to the community, and they send it out to the community in a way that they understand it. And I have to say, I commend you for tonight's 5-year forecast. I don't think that needs to be done here because I think that that is very clear in the documents that you prepared for anyone who takes a look to understand. So I appreciate you preparing those and making them understandable in a way that anyone can pick it up and understand where we're at as a district throughout our community.
Dr. Whiteley? Taking a little bit of a slant from poetry, but still there. This past weekend, I had the privilege to see Lakota West Much Ado About Nothing. And I say a privilege because as an English teacher, high school Shakespeare can be debatable sometimes of what it's going to be like, right? But they took a play that is in prose. It is not in iambic pentameter, it's in prose, but it was absolutely wonderful. I actually had the privilege of having one of the young men in my listening session today at Lakota West, and I think I embarrassed him because I called out his stage name, and he was like, "Oh, where were you in the audience?" But I just really want to commend each of our students and our techs and our set designers. It was a true pleasure, not only as a superintendent but as a former English teacher, to watch that production on stage, and I truly think they would have made the Bard proud. So they did a great job.
Mr. Zink?
I want to thank the executive team and everybody for going to Capitol Conference. I thought it was very nice. Everybody got to spend some time together outside of the normal capacities, and it helps everybody to realize that everybody's human and we're all, trying for the same things, get to know each other better. So I think that definitely helps with the teamwork and helps the team grow. So thanks to the executive team. Thanks for the board. Another good Capitol Conference. Thanks to Mr. Ostley. We actually had a presentation today at noon with OASBO that was for payroll reconciliation. And so I kind of did like a little intro, and that's really all I was doing. And then Darian took it from there, and I think there was 180 people that was on this Zoom presentation. And that's really his element. It was really fun to watch from, me just sitting on the other end of the call trying to do my PowerPoint for this and everything while he was doing his talking. But to watch the way Darian did that, it was really fun. It was really fun to watch because that really is the reconciliations, kind of like his thing that he's really into. So that was fun. But other than that, that's all I've got. Thanks for the words on the forecast. Thanks for approving the forecast. It's a checkpoint in the year. It's hard to believe we're almost to Thanksgiving already. Might as well call it Christmas. Before you know it, it'll be New Year's. I mean, this is just how it goes, it seems like. Went to the football game Friday night. It was sad to see the season end for West, and East season had ended between the last meeting as well. So kind of sad to see the football season go, but winter sports will be here before we know it.
Oh, it was a good game, though. Okay, so when you get to this point, pretty much things have been said, so it's all a repeat. But again, thank you to Adam and your team for the 5-year forecast and to the curriculum department with the value added. Again, like Julie said, I think we need to stress how amazing it is to go from 2 to 4 in the progress. That was a lot of hard work by not only the curriculum department, but our teachers, our building principals, and our students. They embraced the challenge and rose to the occasion with the tools that we gave them. So again, thank you. Much ado about nothing. I was a little worried I wasn't going to understand it, but I did. And the thing that impressed me about it is that we went to the dress rehearsal because that was the only time I could fit it in this weekend. And they didn't hold back. I mean, it wasn't like a dress rehearsal. They did everything that I think they did during the regular play. I mean, that was really amazing to me. I expected there to be tweaks along the way for Kim to maybe stop them and say, hey, how about doing it this way? But they did, and they played to virtually, a handful of people and a whole bunch of stuffed animals. They all brought their stuffed animals in so they would have someone to look at while they were talking. So it was. And again, the student spotlight, always my favorite part of any board meeting. I was telling Dr. Whiteley when we were walking back, I still have my son's poetry book from Independence, and I put it out at his graduation because they bound it and, the whole 9 yards. And I was like, oh, I still have that. So I appreciate whenever students come and talk to us because, again, I'm not sure at that age I could have talked to people. But
Like that, yep.
Yeah, so don't have a problem now, but back then. Okay. It's all you with nothing left to say.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, thank you to everyone for the myriad of topics that have already been discussed, from Capitol Conference to all of our students and all that they've done, all the staff. So just thank you. I do have to add on Much Ado About Nothing. I also was a bit concerned. We know I'm the math nerd and not really the English nerd. I think I make that fairly evident on a regular basis that English is not my strength. So I really did appreciate it, and what a good job they did bringing it to life in a way that when you read it on the page, you don't necessarily see, in the diversity of the cast and all the kids that are brought on board to do the behind the scenes work, and that there's also a place for everyone in our plays and musicals is, I think, something that both of our theater departments excel at, is making sure we include so many students. So thank you to everyone for all the hard work, and I'll leave it with that, with a motion to adjourn. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Nobody wants to
Any
leave.
discussion? Hearing none, Adam, please call the roll.
Ms. French.
Yes.
Ms. Casper.
Yes.
Mr. D.
Yes.
Mr. Horton.
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer.
Yes.